And we're live.
Welcome to WeTaku Anime Reviews. I'm your host, Jovan, and with me are two of my three co-hosts because one of them is awful. Introduce yourselves.
I'm Steven. Hi.
I'm Allan.
And Thomas was completely being a jerk when he decided that both his computer and his internet would break at the same time. Clearly his fault, and we will never forgive him for it. On that note, before we start off, we like to say our specialties in weebology, as it were. For example, I'm still working on my degree, but I'm almost there, guys. Please just fund me if you really need to. I need to get through this graduate program. I'm working on shonenology and all things fight bullshit.
I'm a fan of rom-coms. I'm I'm a sappy person. I'm a sucker for a sappy story, but I also like things like Bakano. I don't know how to classify that into a genre.
All right. I have my degree in psychological. Although in the coming weeks you will not notice that whatsoever.
I should probably decide on a degree.
Can you get a degree in Bach now? Look into it. So, the show we've decided to review today is. It has a much longer name than the one I'm about to give, but for interest of me being able to pronounce it, we're just going to call it Rainbow. Rainbow is a show about seven teenagers in 1955 in post-World War II Japan who have to learn to live together in the same cell in, they call it a reformatory school, I'm calling it a prison. Um, Basically, they're confined together in a hall where suffering and humiliation are daily, and life is awful. They're united through basically how terrible the prison is, because that is not a school, that is straight up a prison. And that's about as spoiler-free as I think I can get with that description.
The full title is Rainbow Nisha Rokubou no Shichinin, which I believe in English is the seven people of Cell 26.
I don't think you're gonna ever find the English name around.
It
No,
showed up in the
you're
subs every
not.
so often, but no. Rainbow does the trick for the most part, I guess.
Yeah.
All right.
It,
So, we're going to go through a spoiler-free section real fast where we give you our scores. Unfortunately, due to technical errors, you can already see them. So, we ask that you please pretend to be surprised when we say our scores. just they're not there. It's going to be a huge surprise. It's completely fine. So, quick blurb about the story. The story is not the focus of the show, I don't think. For the first half of the show, I think it has more of a rigid plot than the second half. But all in all, it binds the story well together. It's one of those shows where I question if it's so character driven, how do I judge the story? But I don't know. The way it tied everything together, and especially the way the first half was handled, I think I have to give it an 8 out of 10.
Surprise.
Surprise, nobody knew. Steven?
I think you're muted, Steven.
Yikes. I struggled with scoring this one because it seems, and we'll talk about it in the spoiler section, but it seems like the underlying story maybe could have ended approximately halfway through. But at the same time, the latter half was also pretty necessary. It became more episodic, but if you kind of critique it the way you would an episodic show, with each story belonging to itself, basically, I think it's all still really, really good, and I gave the story a 10 out of 10.
Okay. Since it's my turn. I think that the first half was a little fast, and the second half was, I think, perfectly paced. The story itself isn't really the focus. It's more about the characters, which I guess we'll go into the next section. But as a character-driven show, the story isn't really that big. It's focusing on the characters, and so I gave it a 7 out of 10.
And a quick text in from Thomas. Well, his story blurb was surprisingly useless. I'm not sure for story. It was good, but 8. Thank you, Thomas, for your sterling contribution.
Good enough.
Good enough. All right, so moving swiftly onwards, We'll talk about characters, which was the main focus of the show. And once we get into the spoiler section, I think that's basically going to be 90% of what we talk about. But in short, there are 7 characters: Soldier, Cabbage, Mario, Joe. Somebody help me out here. There's a lot of
Uncovered,
Uncovered,
Turtle,
Turtle, and Bro, Anshan. I don't know.
Sakuragi.
Sakuragi. He's the only one who really gets a real name sometimes. Everybody else goes by their nickname. We cannot go any more into the characters without spoiling everything, considering the entire show is about their character arcs. So I'm just going to say that my score for them was also an 8 due to, well, I like really realistic. You guys have heard, I guess, in every episode thus far, I really like it when characters act together in a realistic manner. And I'll say that these guys did not, but I liked them a lot. They just did not act like real people most of the time, or at least a lot of the time.
Now that you say that, I can see that sentiment. But I mean, as has already been said, this show really shines with the characters. I think this show has some of the best characters out of any anime I've ever seen. I gave characters a 10 as well.
I'd like to make a little point. The main characters are really great. I love them. But any character with the label of villain is stupid. So I gave it a 7.
Yeah, fair. That is.
I guess so.
I will also argue that the main characters are also stupid. However, we'll move on from that once we get to spoilers. And Thomas gave characters an 8, saying, it surprised me with them at times. He really did not say much for these blurbs. I'm sorry, guys, but he said the character surprised him, so that's an 8 out of 10. So after that, we have animation. Originally, I was going to give this a 7 because it didn't wow me. Like, I thought it looked nice, but it did not. There were none of the sparkles or the glam from like modern day anime, I guess. But it also didn't have the I guess, kind of muted rustic feel that I get from 90s anime, which are my 2 favorite kinds of animation styles. However, something Steven said to me before the show started convinced me to bring it up just points by saying I can't imagine the show done in any other art style. And I think I'll agree there. Any attempt to make it darker or the colors like less standouts would have made the show just look kind of awful, and anything trying to make it more sparkly would have killed like any of the mood that it was trying to go for. So that I'll still give it an 8 because it's not my favorite art style in the world, but it was the perfect thing for what it was doing.
Okay, so Javon kind of stole my thunder there. As was said, I can't imagine the story being told with a different art style. This came out in 2010, and even aside from the story that's being told, I think it was a bit ahead of the curve with art in that time. That may not be true. That may just be my bias, but that's how it seems to me. And the character designs stand out really well. Like the character designs, at least some of them, are really, really unique to me, and the facial expressions are done really well. And it's just dark enough for the tone of the anime. So I gave animation an 8 because, as Javon said, it wasn't spectacular, but they took what they had and they did it really, really well.
I agree. As far as the aesthetic goes, it really fits. But as far as technical, like, skill level, I guess we're gonna say, there were a lot of times where people were just standing or sitting in this case because, prison. Um,
Prison.
but there were moments where it did look good. There were a lot of moments where there were still images, but that was also part of the aesthetic. I can't really fault it for it, but at the same time, I can't really say anything marvelous about the animation about it. So I gave it a 7.
Which means most of us are on somewhat of the same page there. And then Thomas, for animation, had this to say: 8 for art. Solid, but nothing special. However, it was very smooth. Reminded me of Full Metal a lot. And, well, I kind of like the comparison to Full Metal Alchemist just due to the fact that there was a fun picture I found that compared Barimoto, uncovered, as it were, the glasses reading dude of the bunch, with Major Lieutenant Hughes from Fullmetal Alchemist, as well as Leorio from Hunter x Hunter. And although the art styles were different, you could see comparisons like between character design for sure. And finally, we will move on to the sound, which for me hit that very, very awkward point of I don't want to download this and to listen to it daily, but I do really, really love it, which gave me my fourth 8 of this review, just due to the fact that I do really enjoy this soundtrack. I think the music fit the moments it was in very well. I felt inspired when I wanted to be. I nearly cried when they wanted me to, and I think the soundtrack has a lot to do with that. But I don't, with the exception of maybe the opening theme, which I thought was stellar, and it helps that it's in English. Uh, with the exception of the opening theme, I don't think I'll remember most of these themes, and I don't think I want to just listen to them on a day-to-day basis, which would have been my requirement to get anything higher. So it's an 8 out of 10.
So I agree that the opening was stellar. I also thought the ending was stellar. It's very rare that I want to listen to the ending to an anime, but this one I always did. And even beyond the soundtrack, the way they use sound in general was really nice. Like the I we'll talk about it in spoilers more, but like the one scene where Joe was singing and there was like no music, it was just voice. Like that's really good and was really great for the moment. And I think that was probably the best part of the soundtrack. It was very varied. Like it wasn't just using the same one or two songs over and over. There were so many different like songs that would fit the moment very, very well. And I can agree that it didn't really stand out as something I'm going to remember or want to listen to. But when you're watching the anime, it fits better than the vast majority of anything I've seen. So I gave sound a 9.
Okay. Well, I think that the soundtrack is very fitting for the anime. I think the guitars are definitely used very well, especially it really fits the like post-war feel, the like setting that they're trying to make. Um and whenever they do pull out other instruments, because guitars make up like the majority of the soundtrack, um it's very impactful because you do notice when they switch away from the guitars. Um, Joe's singing is very good. Props to that guy. Um, so I gave it an 8.
Uh,
And, oh, Steven?
are we ready to move into spoilers? Because
I
I have
was-
something I'd like to start with.
Well, first off, I'm just going to give Thomas's explanation of sound. He wasn't really blown away by the in-show sounds, but he did really like the opening and ending themes. So that's his 7. And now we are entering the spoiler section in 5, 4, 3, 2, now.
Okay.
So moving into that, going off of something Allan just said in his sound rating, this is set post-war. This is the setting of the anime is right after World War II in Japan. So America like is occupying parts of Japan, and I think that's really important to note for later parts of the series, and like for the whole like torture thing in the prison that we're going to get into. The time period is pretty important to start out with.
On top of that, I do want to give a warning to anybody watching this. If you are faint of heart, easily like panicked, or do not think you can handle dark, gritty, or downright horrible scenes, maybe don't watch this one.
Trigger warning on basically everything.
I mean, like, yeah, basically. I think that, and they had this disclaimer at the beginning of every episode as well, saying that they believed it was important to bring out the feel of the time period. And I wholeheartedly agree and believe that they never went over what they needed to. However, what they needed to was heavy. So
Yeah.
keep that in
Yeah.
mind if you want to watch this show. All right, so one thing I want to do, starting off every spoiler section, is to ask everybody, who was your best girl? Who is best girl, really?
I mean, best girl was undoubtedly Setsuko.
Ah, but best girl does not have to be a girl.
Uh,
That took a minute.
For example, my best girl is Barimoto, who goes from worst girl to best girl to worst girl to okay girl. Barimoto goes through a lot. However, I don't know. I really did like following him and watching him go from not being able to trust to learning to trust to trusting too much to finding a neutral ground of some sort. I liked following Barimoto's story, so he is the winner in my heart of best girl. Which, if you haven't figured out by now, is just me asking who is your favorite character.
well, my best girl is probably Tsupon, or Snapping Turtle, because he likes to bite people, or at least he did when he was younger.
Oh no,
I
it's
think I think he kind of grew out of it a little bit, but eh. He's just great. Like he's the youngest of the bunch, and
He's got a lot of spunk.
he does. He's fierce. He's got spunk. He's fun.
he makes up for his size with a lot of pride.
Yeah. And yeah, he's the youngest, yet he continues to be a criminal for
That's
a
true.
long time.
It would seem that Steven has stolen mine. Mine
Oh,
is also
there's-
turtle.
Do you have anything to add to that bit then, or
I mean, I did add that he had spunk.
fair? Fair
Oh.
enough. Cannot argue.
Also, as I mentioned about character designs earlier, his is very unique. He has like the whole like, I guess, I don't know what his face is.
He has holes in his
Honestly.
face.
Yeah, he
I
has like
think
little
those are
holes
supposed to
in
be
his
freckles,
face.
but I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm
You know,
not
some people
sure.
do have like little indentions in their face.
All right.
Like,
And then-
it's
Fair
weird,
enough.
but
And then once he grows hair, he has some rockin' hair.
God, it shows up in the theme song. So, fun fact, the theme song's actually kind of a spoiler for the whole show or at least for the first half.
the theme song's always a spoiler.
Well, this
Yeah.
one didn't even try though. This one is basically just the theme song for the second half, but they didn't have time to put it in for the first. So,
If nobody noticed, the ending changed Mario's hair like
did.
halfway through. Yeah.
it did. I noticed that. It also
Yeah.
changed the color that was behind him.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Like
Mhm.
darkish green to red. But going through the episodes real fast, going through the story, as it were, and
Oh, man.
that's basically just me covering character arc after character arc. But the first half of the story follows the first 12 episodes or so follows the boys in prison. Actually, I lied. First 7 episodes or so follows the boys in prison. And in the first episode, all 7 of our characters are introduced with a quick blurb on why they're in the prison, which literally just amounts to read a sentence while they walk across the screen and get punched. You have Mario, who is the budding main character of the group, in that he has no real personality, except to care a lot about other people.
I believe in bro.
He believes in bro a lot.
Yeah.
You have Soldier, whose entire personality is he's essentially just a soldier, even as a kid.
Yeah.
Very strict, very determined, always working out. Notably, the only character who does not do stupid things, ever. You have Cabbage, essentially a giant man with a lot of strength, but not a lot of brain.
It's pretty gullible.
Very kind-hearted, very gullible, but very, very big. You have Turtle, who's the exact opposite. Very small, but with a lot of spunk, a lot of pride, and very crafty. And like you guys said, he bites people. I guess it's an important character trait.
Yeah, we can see chat, by the way.
Barimoto is Uncovered Scam. His name changes in translation on at least the subs we watched. But essentially, he is the underappreciated glasses coon, as it were. He reads his book in the corner. He doesn't talk too much with others, but he's the mastermind and brains of the bunch. There is Joe, a half American, half Japanese guy with blonde hair and blue eyes who gets a lot for that.
Yeah.
Get into that one soon. Poor Joe. And we have Bro, Sakuragi, Anshan, the hero, the guy who everybody looks up to, the Aniki, oh god, why?
The guy who's already been in prison for a long time. Well, school for a long time.
He's
before
gonna get
these
out,
other
though.
6 show up.
Yeah, he was there before they even showed up. So in the first episode, you're introduced to all of them, and after that, you kind of see them grow closer and closer together in prison for the first bit, which culminates in. I think we can skip straight to when Barimoto sets the place on fire.
Yeah, that's probably a good place to go.
He doesn't trust any of the other characters, so he is tricked into burning the place to the ground and accidentally locking them all in their cell.
Well, okay. He was just trying to go to the library and study, but he also hid cigarettes in his books. And so he was sitting in the library smoking, and one of the guards came in. He tossed the cigarette aside, and huge fire happens. I don't think it really had anything with. I guess it kind of had something to do with not trusting the others because he just didn't want to be in the same room with them.
But afterwards, knowing that the key had been thrown out,
Yeah, he could have.
He went out instead of going to them.
Yeah, we need to take a moment to talk about Ishihara.
Okay.
Ishihara's
I have a lot to say about this.
All right, just throw it out there. Throw it out for Ishihara's stay for the first bit before the second half of the prison bit happens.
I hate him so much, and not because he's the villain, but because he's written like a bad fan fiction villain. I've read enough fan fiction to know this. There is no motivation behind that other than he is crazy.
I think. All right.
I disagree.
In my opinion, Ishihara's character comes from two things. One, it shows a really cool contradiction between. He's supposedly a guard. He's supposed to be like the vanguard for civilized humanity, and yet he's a sadistic, horrible human being who revels in the pain of others, right? Whereas these kids who are in prison are actually all kind-hearted, good people, but, they are the scum of society. And two, the reason he hates Bro so much is because Bro threatens to destroy everything that he is the moment he gets out of jail.
I think we should get into that later, talk about, his motivations and all later. I wholeheartedly disagree and believe that he does what he does for a reason. But right now, I'd just like to say Ishihara is the guy in charge of the 7 boys in Cell 2-6, and he consistently tortures Sakuragi. Ishihara kind of gets in Barimoto's face a couple times and is like, did Sakuragi do this? And Barimoto's like, yes, Sakuragi did it. So Ishihara then has an excuse to beat Sakuragi. And so that's what causes the tension between those two characters and why Barimoto wants to go to the library.
And why the whole place eventually goes up in flames. However, after that, unsurprisingly, Barimoto, after Anshan nearly sacrifices himself to save them all,
Ishihara throws the key out the window. He's staring at Barimoto and is like, oh, you set the place on fire. I'm just going to throw the key to your cell out the window so your friends can't get out.
Yeah, but afterwards, they're saved and they become closer together, right?
Mm-hmm.
And after that, the second arc goes through, whereas while they're still in prison, Anshan Bro is about to be let out of prison, and then the two people in charge of the prison are essentially Ishihara, the guard, and Dr. Sasuke. And they make it their goal to kill Bro before he can leave the prison and reveal that they're running a sadistic horror show that kills people, essentially.
Yeah, so they lock him into a cell and just drip water on him consistently.
Which, as you guys might know, is actually a form of torture.
Yes, it's torture and
They also starve him.
death. Yeah, they starve
Yeah.
him and they're torturing him and trying to send his body into shock from the cold
The
of the
starving
water.
comes first.
True. So that this begins happening. Well, I don't actually remember chronologically with this because he was also sent to the other cell with
It's not that important. Just know that he was tortured, and this arc ends by a quick. They do break him out, and then, well,
Before they break him out, he's sent Sakuragi's sent to a holding cell with a bunch of other people who Ishihara actually basically has hired to beat the crap out of Sakuragi consistently, and he wants Sakuragi to fight back.
which I want to talk about that moment.
Mario's
talk about-
hand gets crushed. That's where I'm
I
trying
want
to
to talk
go.
about those 2 moments there.
We are in spoilers section. You can say whatever.
That's true. Yeah, so I'm going to talk about those moments. What I wanted to say was, first off, yeah, I want to talk about how cool Bro was. First off, because he takes beatings day after day after day after day and does nothing. He never fights back. He's the pinnacle of a perfect inmate. Nothing goes. He doesn't do anything bad because he knows he wants to get out. However, the instant those thugs crush Mario's hand and crush his dreams of boxing.
Yeah.
Oh my lord, that was the most beautiful scene. That still might be my favorite scene of the entire show right there. Is just Anshan standing up to 4 giant thugs and saying, you goofed. Goodbye."
You
And
hurt
you
my
just hear
friend.
screaming and like pain noises. You see 2 of the thugs who were beating on him hold him up like they're all about to beat him up like they have been. And you just cut to outside the cell and you see Ishihara smiling at the sounds of like pain and screaming and shock. And once you go back into that cell, there are 4 dying men in there and 1 standing bro, and it is fantastic.
And they can't do crap to Sakuragi because the 4 guys on the ground say, nope, wasn't him. We just fought each other. And so then with, I think he's supposed to get out the next day.
And they
But
break him out because he's gonna die.
Yes, they're about to kill Sakuragi, so they break him out.
Yeah.
So I think one of the best part, or like most important themes from that first like half of the show. Well, that's not half. That's the first 8 episodes. They get out on episode 8. But I think one of the most important things and why I like it so much is they have this idea of friendship, but they throw what anime usually does out the window. Like there are times when Mario's just like, I believe in bro, and then someone else will punch him in the face and say, shut up, look out for yourself. It's every man for himself in here.
That someone else is always Soldier, mind you. Soldier's
True.
fantastic.
But everyone else has that mindset as well.
Yes.
So it's just like, it's throwing everything you know out the window, saying, screw people, screw friendship. But at the same time, we're friends.
Yeah, there's some other things I want to talk about in that first half, such as the juxtaposition between how brutal that first half was. Mind you, there is what essentially amounts to rape scenes with not quite as gory as that could have been, thank God, but still pretty bad. You see torture. You see Mario's hand is crushed, crushing his dreams of being a boxer. You see a lot of horrible things. And then you have the scenes pause, and a narrator with like a very nice soothing voice will tell you their thoughts like, Mario was crushed because he couldn't fight for his friends, or something like that. And I really love that juxtaposition between you're watching this horribly dark, awful thing, but then you have like themes almost spoon-fed to you as if you're a child. And I don't know if that was on purpose or not, but I loved that because I don't know, it brought like
It brought hope kind of to the show. Like that narration brought hope even to these dark parts of the show. It like stops with like rainbow overlay and it's pretty great. Yeah, I really like that narration thing.
Yeah.
And one thing we didn't mention that I think is important, Dr. Sasaki like sexually abuses boys in the prison. He will pay Ishihara to like just let him use the boys in the prison. And that's how they eventually escape, actually, because Joe's just like, well, I've been through this before in my life. I'll do it again and get the key to the cell.
And
then he ties up the naked Dr. Sasaki and steals the key.
it was
But yeah,
amazing.
that's an
Okay.
important part about Sasaki's character. He's
Um,
supposed to be the nice doctor, but he's actually pretty much commanding Ishihara.
Wait, in absolute fairness, though, were you surprised when he was evil? Because I was expecting it the whole time.
I wasn't surprised.
I still don't like how they basically have no motivation. There was no motivation given for anything.
I think
They're just evil for being evil, and I hate it.
Ishihara's motivation was Sasaki was telling him to do things and paying him to do things, and like Sasaki threatened to kill Ishihara for things at some point. Like,
Sure, but even before then,
I
like-
think it literally just amounted out to the fact that they were just horrible people for horrible
Yeah.
people's
yeah, and I
sake.
hate
Yeah,
that
yeah.
because there's no reason. They're just evil.
But
It doesn't
why should there be a reason? There are definitely people out there who are
because
just
it's
straight up
bad writing to
sadists.
not have a reason.
What backstory can you give for somebody to be a sadist, though? Like, what reason would you want Ishihara to have to want to torture children? There's no backstory that's gonna be like, you know what I want? Torturing kids.
Sasaki's a perverted old man. Like, that's it. Like,
That's
there's just evil in the world, and that's like
they
another
are.
thing.
Yeah,
of the
I
show,
see
I
where
think.
it's coming from, but when
I
even
get your point.
any villain, not just those two, even the like lawyer guy, I don't even know what his name was. The lawyer guy when Mario in the latter half of the series when Mario almost gets put back in prison,
Yeah.
he was just dumb. Like
Yeah,
there
I
was
didn't get
no
that.
reason why he
I
wouldn't
think
listen to
That
Mario.
Talk
that one
about
made
that.
sense to me actually. So fun fact: after they escape the prison, they first get revenge on Ishihara and Sasaki for the saddest moment in the show, probably, which would be the murder of Anjan, which probably wasn't a surprise because he is the older brother cool character who will eventually pass on the role of main character to the guy who doesn't really have much of personality, a la Gurren Lagann or Akame ga Kill.
Fair.
But because they killed him after escaping the prison, the boys get revenge on them and then start to try to move on with their lives, each of them following their own path but keeping in touch and always hanging out. Mario is the first one to goof up in the real world, I guess you'd call it.
Mm-hmm.
After finding out that the woman he loves, who was also Anshan's girlfriend before Anshan died, is marrying another man, he picks a fight with some random dude in a pub because that guy's being a jerk, and is essentially sued and said he's going to prison for being a brute. And I think the villain you guys are talking about there, who refuses to even hear his pleas because he's like, no, you are a criminal, your criminal record says you are a criminal. In absolute fairness, this is a post-war society still trying to rebuild. I think it makes sense, at least to me, that there are going to be people who just want to destroy anything that they think is crime and the scum of society. There are those people who are shell-shocked from the war who have decided that anything that is like not morally pure is an enemy, and that anyone who is making Japan look bad is the reason they got nuked and they need to kill them.
Okay. Here is my problem with that. Just like your problem with Paranoia Agent is the ending basically nullifies everything else. There is no explanation for it. There is no solid explanation other than it's post-war society, and for all you know, he was fighting in the war, right? But
Yeah. Well, let me make a point here. Like, I agree with what Javon's saying, until they contradict it in a way, because
Whereas
it's
immediately he changes his
Barimoto.
mind.
Not that. It's that
Yeah,
this prosecutors that we're talking about, and he's talking to Barimoto. Barimoto's the one trying to save Mario. And then at the end of this whole thing, after they get written statements from the victims and decide, like, all right, we're letting Mario go, like the prosecutor decides you can go, you have good friends. Then the prosecutor says, like, your son's a good guy because he fought in the war with Barimoto's father. So then I'm like, okay, wait, why were you being a dick when you're like, oh, you have a good son, I fought with what? Like, that contradicted it for me. But
I'm just trying to give reasons. There's a reason I didn't give this show a perfect score, and that there were flaws like that.
yeah.
In fairness, you're right. The villains did suck. I think Allan, in my opinion, you hate them a little bit more than maybe should be, but to each their
I,
own.
I have read way too many fan fiction where the villains are literally that. They're just people who have
They're just in the
like
way because
way
we need
too
people in the way.
extreme prejudice against other people. It's just annoying at this point. I hate that. I hate that trope. I want it to burn in a fire.
I get your point.
All right, fair enough.
I haven't seen that trope in a long time though, so that's good.
At least that's good for what you're watching. Some other themes I want to cover that show up in the second half, because the second half is just the men now, I guess. Still kind of boys, still kind of men, trying to grow up first off and trying to figure out society. I want to talk about some of the themes we saw there, of the first, and I think most relevant to what we were just talking about, theme of Mario boxing Americans.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I liked it a lot because it's one of those things that reminds you I'm an American watching this show, but this show was not made for me. At the end of the day,
Yeah.
this show was made for other Japanese people to watch
Yeah.
in a country that was devastated by two bombs the likes of which the world had never seen.
Also, I'd like to point out Turtle lost his entire family to atomic bombs. Like,
Yeah, like you see records of the war everywhere, and although maybe that the lawyer didn't do it well, I think there was enough of Lily, a woman that they come to meet and joins their family in some way, uh, saying that she wants to see the Americans finally fall in a boxing match. In Mario trying to wrestle them, in the distrust that you see in Turtle's dealings with them, even though his job requires him to talk to Americans. The show always reminds you that he doesn't trust them and he still holds his grudge because he lost his entire life because of them.
mhm.
Uh,
The
that-
Americans are the ones who shoot Sakuragi like
Yeah.
many times.
and the Americans are the ones who ruin Lily's life as well. But I also like that not all Americans were evil. For example, you had Jeffrey,
Yeah.
The
who had
general.
he showed up a little bit more. No, the general kind of sucked, but Jeffrey was great because he's the one who gets Mario back on his feet. He's the one who gets Lily access to the hospital. He acknowledges the Japanese as his equals only because 3 years ago Mario had knocked him out in a boxing match, and I don't know. I kind of liked that there was an American. There was a chance, and he always tries to communicate with Mario despite the fact that they do not speak the same language, and half of their conversations end up with both of them just sighing and being like, "I don't know what's happening." Uh, the attempted communication there and like the friendship that formed despite the barrier. I like that they showed there was an American, or there were also like good American relations as well.
Mhm.
Can we talk about that arc for a second? I think that arc was a little rushed.
It was. They're running out of episodes.
Yeah. It was,
But
but they had a recap episode.
They did not need that recap episode.
They could have used that episode, that extra episode, to make it longer. Because it was basically, we need to get his hand fixed because he wants to box again.
And then
It's
you
fixed.
get a quick montage. His hand was fixed. Also, he trained really hard. All right, time to go.
and then he broke his hand again. Or that may have been. Oh, I guess he did that before. His hand had mostly healed from the prison, and then he went to box again
And then yeah,
and
he basically
lost
broke it.
really bad. And oh man, that scene, I
Yeah.
felt that.
Oh
Yeah.
god,
You
no.
saw his hand just move, and oh,
I think my favorite thing is I'm currently head deep into Hajime no Ippo, the boxing anime.
oh.
I don't know if Rainbow drew heavily off Ippo or if the Japanese are just very good at portraying boxing. However, like
It's a very manly sport.
I could actually just draw comparison after comparison after comparison between scenes from Ippo and like scenes directly brought into Rainbow for the boxing. And I just really enjoyed that because everything from the training to the actual matches just felt like I was watching Ippo but the wrong character. And I liked that a lot. Yeah, that his end arc felt rushed. But speaking of rushed, I would have loved to have literally anything happen with Soldier.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but him
So,
and Cabbage
I mean,
were not important.
Cabbage did have
Cabbage got
his
2 episodes.
story though. But
Yeah.
Soldier, what would Soldier do? He had his life set on something and then he did it.
He
Soldier's
had
the only
his
one of
stuff
them who's,
together.
like an actual person.
He had his stuff together when no one else did.
That's true.
Maybe that's
I mean,
just his story.
He kind of beat up like Baramoto.
He did beat up Baramoto.
He was there at least, you know.
Yeah, he was always there. He was always there and he was always important, but he never got his own arc. There was never any trouble. I figured he's an ex-inmate. I figured if anybody was gonna have trouble, it was gonna be him when he joined the army. But the army just accepts him with open arms, I guess.
If you can
Yeah.
shoot,
If you can
then
shoot,
you're fine.
I guess so.
It's post-war society. I mean,
You guess you need soldier. Wait, Japan like barely even had an army at that point.
yeah.
They really did not need an extra guy. I don't know. I think I would have liked to see soldiers' struggles trying to join the army, but I guess that's one of those things that we're never gonna get, and I'll have to deal with it. Other themes that I really enjoyed. There's one theme I want to say for last. So, is there anything that really stood out to you guys other than the overall theme of friendship and family that was hammered into your head more times than I think I've ever seen in any shonen?
Yet it wasn't. You said spoon-fed to you, but not in the same way.
It wasn't spoon-fed in the same way. However, the word friendship was used at least 50 times.
There
an
weren't
episode.
people yelling out.
I fight for my friends.
Yeah.
I did want to talk about Joe for a second and
Yes.
how everything went wrong for him.
Joe is
every
just
time.
sad.
Joe did
He tried to
nothing
be a
wrong.
singer and he almost got mercury down his throat, and then
That was
And he gets his
okay.
big-
That was another thing. That was completely uncalled for. And when that band's manager was gonna shoot Joe, like then he pussied out.
He should have just done
Yeah,
it.
He was
No,
like-
I think we can all agree he should have just done it.
yeah, but
No. What I'm saying is he wasn't consistent.
No, he wasn't.
He was
No.
incredibly aggressive the first time and then incredibly passive the second time. It was
But-
weird.
what I want to bring out in Joe's story more than anything is everything went wrong for him until kind of the very end of his arc when it was kind of okay, I guess. He missed his show, so he didn't get his big break singing. But then his sister showed up. Turtle, she was there for the concert. Joe
Turtle.
missed it, but then Turtle got his sister to come anyway and listen to him sing. And that was probably my favorite scene from the show. It was my second time watching it, and I teared up again.
Turtle
Oh,
was
man.
probably the best friend out of all of them.
I think
Oh,
they all
yeah.
agreed that Turtle was the best friend out of all of them.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, I'll get to that real fast. But first, yeah, Joe singing for his sister. And then after he saw his sister and started crying, I kept expecting him, after she asked him to start singing again.
Yeah.
But he just kept crying. And I thought that was actually better. Anime logic
Yeah.
tells me that he would have stopped crying and started singing again with like a smile on his face.
Yeah.
But like
Yeah.
real life logic says he's gonna keep sobbing. This is a sister who he thought was gone forever. He just
Though is a
kept-
prostitute now
I-
because nothing goes right
yes.
for Joe.
Nothing goes right for
But-
Joe. But in
that
all
was the
honesty, if anybody was going to be a prostitute and be okay with it, it was going to be Joe's family, as both of them have resigned themselves to being used by others, which kind of sucks a lot.
Joe only
Last-
really resigned himself completely when he signed the contract.
Yeah.
He still didn't like that idea all the
Yeah.
way through the prison.
Last thing I want to say on the scene is it was the one I mentioned way earlier where it was only singing, there was no music, and that, like, in that scene, that hit hard. Like, that's why you tear up, and oh man, the sound there, so good, so good. They use silence well as in
Yeah.
addition to a soundtrack.
They do. And one more thing I want to hit before I hit the final theme was just I'm kind of angry that they did so much setup for Turtle to be dying of some sort of radiation poisoning.
He had a
Like,
cold.
he keeps falling over, he keeps having, like, what might be seizures, I don't know.
He had a
And
cold
then at
and
the end of the day, like,
PTSD.
actually, he had a cold.
And PTSD.
I guess the PTSD can explain it somewhat, because I guess the thud, I don't know. I guess, did it happen? What had happened every time? Was there a loud noise nearby? No, because one of them was in
No,
his room.
he just had dream. Well, actually,
Sometimes he was just awake and he was like, "Oh, am I really this tired?" And then like he'd have
I
a
think
seizure.
at that point he was just starting to panic because it kept on happening. I'm not sure,
Mm,
but because
don't-
it's never explained.
it is
but-
explained. He had a cold.
Turtle's
Okay,
just
okay,
tiny, his body can't
I-
handle anything.
Actually, I guess it is kind of explained when the doctor says the cold made it harder to breathe, and from personal experience, if you're trying to breathe real hard, that can really fuck you up.
All right, maybe that was it, and it could have just reminded him of trying to breathe after an atomic blast, which
Yeah.
probably wasn't an easy thing to do. In all honesty,
That's probably what started the heavy breathing.
Yeah,
But like afterwards, like his body failing was probably because
his body size is also probably because of that. In all honesty,
yeah.
And the final theme I want to talk about in our last 10-ish or so minutes was the passing down of the stick, where Mario kind of ceases to exist, though you could argue how much character he had to begin with, and kind of just becomes Anchan. And all the other characters notice it too. Like, the first time you see it is when Setsuki just looks at him as like, oh god, he's the exact same. But the fact that his hairstyle was the exact same, his facial features were so similar
He became a boxer.
that he became a boxer to be like Anchan. The rest were just
He fell in love
was
with Anchan's
girlfriend,
girlfriend.
who fell in love with
Yeah.
him because they were the same person. Even during the theme song, you see the six of them minus Anchan in their post prison outfits and hairstyles and whatnot. And there's the one character on the end wearing a single white glove and has a hat, and I still could not tell until we saw Mario wearing that white glove. I still thought, you know what, that could be Anchan. They look the same.
Yeah.
They look the
Yeah, I
exact
definitely
same.
didn't know until he was wearing the glove.
So, I mean, that passing of the torch was definitely done on purpose. Of the
It-
first person you've ever trusted and loved dies, and
It
you.
made the bland main character not as bland.
But
which
he
is
wasn't
okay
as
with
bland
me.
because he adopted somebody else's character.
It's
Which was
still
also-
okay with me.
Sad.
It was also predictable from the beginning, not in a bad way though.
No, I know
like
what you mean. Mario was always
yeah.
going to be the setup as the main character who's
Yeah.
going to replace Anchan.
from the very beginning, he's like, I believe in bro. Like he was just kind of his protege, and like
He was.
it was completely predictable. And I don't actually think it was a bad thing in this case.
I did not say it was a bad thing. However, I think it was sad because maybe this is another horror of war. I kind of have it beaten into my head that this is a war story at the end of the day, despite the fact that none of these kids were in the war.
Hmm.
He lost the closest friend he'd ever had through what is essentially hell. War is hell, so is going through that hell of a prison where they were even bonded through actual fire. And to make up for that, he became bro. He wanted to do everything that Anchan was going to do. He wanted Anchan to live through him. And to do that, he kind of gave up himself as a person to become Anchan. He didn't have any dreams for himself. He became a boxer.
His
He didn't have
dream
any-
was for everyone's dreams to come true.
Okay, yes, he was a blind man
Yeah.
character. But but he had a kind heart, and I was okay with that. And I was okay, like, because of that, it was okay that he adopted Anchan's character afterwards. But even in the final scene of the show, where Anchan says, "What are you doing?" And Mario replies, shadowboxing what is essentially Anshan's ghost, I'm going to fulfill your dream of being a boxer. And he says it with a smile on his face, and I'm glad he's happy he chose this path, sure. But at the end of the day, Mario gave up any dreams or goals or personality he could have had for himself so that he could let Anshan live on through him. And I kind of wanted that to be addressed a little bit more because to me, I think that's heartbreaking that he lost his chance to be a person because the person he loved the most lost their chance to live.
Yeah, to be fair though, even beforehand, he was still going to be a boxer. So he still I'm guessing, he still enjoys boxing. So even if it is Anshan's dream and he wants Anshan's dream to come true, it'll probably eventually become his dream anyway.
Probably eventually, but don't forget when the doctor asked, wow, he's risking so much on the surgery. Does he really like boxing? And then all 5 of his closest friends in the entire world say, we actually don't know. Does he like boxing? But he's serious about the surgery.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
Uh,
I don't know. To me, that's really sad.
I'd like to. Jovan, you remember when I messaged you about the the English person trying to speak Japanese?
Yes.
Oh my gosh. When Lily's like ex said take care of her in Japanese, I just heard the voice of God.
Oh man, I did like what they did with voice acting. They found when they needed somebody to speak English, I believe they were still Japanese voice actors just due to the way that they said their words.
Yeah.
But their accents were so close to American that I did guess myself on that first assumption. Especially the Major and Jeffrey, the boxing soldier. Whenever they would speak English, the accent sounded right, but the words sounded wrong. Like the writing, I guess, still was from a Japanese point of view, so not all the words were quite right. But the accents were on point for Americans, and I really did like the casting they did there.
There is something that I always use to tell is usually when Japanese voice actors, even if they get the accent right, they still have this weird like flow to their words that an English speaker normally wouldn't have. It just sort of pauses in weird spots, or not really pauses, but sort of,
The tones aren't quite
it's
right for us.
yeah.
You
It's
can
like
tell. You're not sure why you can tell, but you can tell.
yeah.
They
And on
still did well though.
They did
Yeah,
very
no,
well.
it's really good
This is
voice
the best
acting.
That's the best English I've heard in any anime, I think.
I heard the voice of God, man.
You heard the voice of God. So let's go to the final scores and ratings. We have 5 minutes left in the show.
Yep, on it.
So,
Are these all up already
Oh
too?
shoot. All right. Well,
Nope.
I forgot to fix this.
Oh no.
So they can see you two. I'm just here. Here.
yes, perfect.
All right,
Sorry
so-
guys. You
My
can
final-
tell this was a little bit of a rush job.
That would be my fault. I got the overlays in a little bit late. Oops. However, it's fine.
It was also kind of my fault because I got into this call about a lot
It's fine
later
either
than I
way.
usually do.
Anyhow.
But
It's
whatever.
fine either way. Our cameras aren't perfect. Skype is awful. Recording is awful. Doesn't matter.
We're amateurs.
We are-
Moving on.
Shush. We are professionals in some worlds. So, my final score was a 9, which, if you might notice, was higher than any of my scores, which is an 8. I think this show is greater than the sum of its parts. You can find flaws with the villains, you can find flaws with the characters. Their interactions aren't quite right for human beings. They focus on friendship a little bit too much, I think. And some of the plot points that happen and some of the weaknesses that they show later on, I don't think would actually happen. However, the show is going to stay with me for a long time. Maybe I'm just scarred for life by those first 12 episodes of horror and awful crap that happens to them in jail. But the inspirational, they're moving on with their lives. They're still going through problems. They still can't find places to fit in as ex-cons. But they're still slowly but surely moving on to a good future. Between the two themes, I I really loved this show. There was so much wrong with it. There was so much dark, heavy stuff, but it was so worth watching, and I have to recommend it to anybody. Not many people have heard of the show. I know I hadn't before we put it on the schedule.
It's actually pretty high up there on Mal.
It's
Just
high up
saying.
there on Mal, but it has a low amount of votes comparatively to
It's
to a lot
it
of the other stuff.
That's
it's
true.
still just pretty obscure, I think, because it's so dark, and also I'm fairly certain it didn't get an American release, which is understandable considering it's pretty anti-American at times.
It
Yeah.
gets pretty
But-
anti-American. This is one of those shows that was definitely made for a Japanese audience more than
Yeah.
anything else, especially because anti-World War II, or I guess post-World War II Japan. But all that said, if you can put yourselves in the shoes of another person, if you can relate to, or at least try your best to relate to how they must have felt after that war, the stories of the children afterwards, I think it's a beautiful story, and I think they're beautiful characters. Who the reason I stuck with that show the whole way through was because I owed it to those kids to learn how they were going to end up. I did, I really did, and it was a great ride. 9 out of 10, fantastic.
Yeah. Well, you can see I gave it an 8 despite most of my scores being 7. Same reason. And this is definitely going to be something that I don't know about the others, but I'll probably do more often in the future where my enjoyment affects the final score more than, well, not more, but probably about an equal amount as the other categories or a little bit more. And that's because the reason why you want to watch anything is to enjoy it. So, yeah, 8 out of 10. It was really good. Can't really say much more.
I thought it was amazing. It's definitely in my top 5 anime. I mean, there are definitely some flaws, but I don't necessarily believe that anything's going to reach perfect. And in my opinion, this is probably the closest to perfect for this type of story that I've ever seen. Like, I think they did everything that they tried to do spectacularly, despite the flaws that it had. I thought the characters were some of, as Javon said, the interactions weren't necessarily the most realistic, but they had heart. They were people, and so I think they were some of the best characters I've ever seen. Animation was good. Sound matched the anime well. I just thought everything in this show was about as close to perfect as it gets, and so my opinion is 10 out of 10.
And Thomas's final score was, I believe, an
It's an 8.
8.
Well, that's fair considering I think he gave mostly 8s anyways. I'm not
He
looking at
did.
the actual.
I
Yeah.
just want to say I don't actually hate the series, despite hating the villains. I may have given off that vibe. I don't hate the series. I actually really like the series.
Just sometimes you focus on the things you didn't like a little bit more.
I've recommended this to everyone that watches anime since the day that I finished watching it. I've recommended it to everyone, and I think everyone should watch it. So
It's not an easy watch, though. Keep that in mind.
Yeah.
I recommended it to a friend, but after watching a little bit more of the first 12, I actually rescinded it because it's not something that just anybody can watch, I think.
Yeah.
It's not something you can just go into with a light heart, I guess.
it's heavy.
It's heavy, but it's entirely worth it, I think, in my mind.
All right. I think that about wraps us up.
Okay, so next week, or in 2 weeks, I keep saying next week, I do this every week. 2 weeks. Huh.
Oh yeah,
right.
sorry about the lack of us being around.
Oh, right. It turns out it's actually impossible to edit anything without a desktop, and the desktop was not with us for roughly 3 weeks.
My laptop's
So-
pretty shitty. Sorry, guys.
We're back, and you can expect a lot from us, but first, let's talk about what we're going to be watching in 2 weeks' time, or reviewing in 2 weeks' time. I'm hoping we're going to watch it before the day of. And that would be Rokka of the Braves. When the demon god awakes from the depths of darkness, The goddess of fate selects 6 heroes and bequeaths them the power to save the world. We follow Adlet, a boy who proclaims himself to be the strongest man in the world, who has been selected as a hero. And that's actually all I'm going to say.
Okay.
There's a little bit more to it. However,
Here, guys.
some of you might want to go into this show completely blind, and I highly encourage that you do.
If you don't want to, I'll just put it in the chat.
Fair.
Is this a shonen?
Is it a shonen?
Is it?
I was just
Either
asking.
way. I'd say it's a shonen, yes.
Okay.
I
But,
forgot I'm still in this like little corner here.
It is a shonen, however, I won't say anything more for the plot except for there are some cool powers and some pretty cool fight scenes going on. But some of you might want to go into this completely blind, and I highly, highly, highly encourage that if you haven't seen anything about the show yet, just start watching. Just start watching, and if by episode 5 you don't know what I mean, then I guess this wasn't the show for you, but please go in without any assumptions because you might enjoy the show a lot more that way, I believe.
Warning, be wary of pacing.
Warning, be wary of pacing. Also warning, if you don't like the phrase I'm the strongest man in the world, watch something else. So, with all that in mind, we're about to bid you adieu. I would like to say that in the upcoming weeks, keep checking our YouTube channel, youtube.com/WeTaku. I don't think that's how you can actually find any YouTube channel, but just search WeTaku, will show up. We're going to be putting out first impressions videos very soon the next week of just a few of the anime we either really enjoyed, really hated, or just thought were noteworthy of this season. And I think we will try to do some more videos of that sort. We might also be starting a visual novel playthrough on the channel to see how people might enjoy that. We're going to try to branch out and just have a good time. So we hope you guys will enjoy that with us.
Erased is pretty good. Watch it.
Erased is pretty good. Watch it. I'll agree with that. Also, Grimgar is adorable, and I've only seen the first episode, but definitely found my best girl of the season. I refuse to hear otherwise, no matter what happens.
Sounds like a Pokemon.
I have no idea what you mean. All right, so with all that in mind, I guess we will bid you farewell. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you all soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.